Welcome to the first episode of Mystery Monday. I'm here with Yanni. How's it going, man?
What's up, buddy?
So, we have decided that we are going to give you guys a quarterback tier list for the first Mystery Monday. The rules of the tier list, or I guess the way we tried to order them, is we are taking the starting quarterbacks as of week 12 in the NFL. If a player is injured but they're not out for the season, we are still putting them in. If they're out for the season, we're rolling with their backup. There is one exception. We'll get to that though. But yeah, let's start it off with I think the consensus number one. You guys should all probably know this by now. It is Pat Mahomes. What do you think about Pat Mahomes, Yanni? Why is he number one, even though his production has not been great this year?
Yeah, I mean, so one, he has dealt with the loss of his number one receiver, who I think was one of the best receivers in football. He's dealt without his RB1, who maybe isn't the most talented guy, but was a big part of what they did last year. They've dealt with a lot of roster turnover, but dude, like he's not playing very great. I think we looked up 2,400 yards, 15 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 90 something rating. That's not particularly elite, I guess. But the number one job of a quarterback is to win football games. And I understand that's also a team effort. But with Mahomes and with his team a lot, dude, it really feels like he's the driving force in their wins. And like, I just don't know what I would say to someone. If you want to argue that the next four or five guys on the list are outplaying him, I think that's probably true. But if you want to argue that they're a better quarterback than him or that a team would realistically take them over him, I think you're absolutely delusional. To me, I just until proven otherwise, dude, until something seismically shifts in the NFL, Mahomes is the locked in number one overall player in the league.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like he's not played well this season by the numbers, but he still has his team at 10-1, right? He's a force multiplier in the playoffs. I think until proven otherwise, he will be number one on the list forever.
Yeah,
Let's go to
yeah.
number two, and it is our boy Josh Allen.
That one's all you.
Yeah,
You're the
okay.
big
Yeah.
boy.
I've been a big Josh Allen guy for years. I had him as number two, I believe, 2 years ago. It was the year the Bills opened up against the Rams after they won the Super Bowl. Listen, man, he is a mobile Brett Favre with the body of Ben Roethlisberger. The dude absolutely carries the team. They just got rid of Diggs this offseason, which was looking to be by far the Bills' best pass weapon in the passing game. They tried to draft Keon Coleman, but he's out there like making guys like Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, just absolute force multipliers. He throws a lot of interceptions, right? Josh will go out there. He's a gunslinger in the truest sense of the word. He will make plays for better or worse, but he's actually played pretty clean this year. I think he has like one interception through 12 weeks. Even without Diggs, he's still producing. I would be really excited to see what the Bills can do if they get a top flight wide receiver or if Amari Cooper can step into that role. What do you think, Yanni?
Yeah, dude. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say. We all know what the deal with Josh is. If you want some of the most exciting quarterback play we've ever seen in the NFL, incredible arm talent, you got your guy.
Yeah, and
It's
I th-
prototypical and everything.
I think maybe some fans might think that this next guy we're going to put on the list is above Josh Allen, but we have Lamar here at three to close out the God tier. What do you think, Yanni? There was a little bit of debate back and forth between me and Yanni about whether or not Lamar was God tier or the elite tier. We ended up settling on God tier.
Yeah, to me, I really don't like the way that racial discourse has been interjected into the NFL, right? I think it's kind of a problem that we too often racialize conversations that are just regular sports conversations. I do think with Lamar, there was this really interesting thing where I think some people felt the need to overly defend him because he was a what you would, I don't know, mobile quarterback, a traditionally black quarterback in terms of his speaking, his mannerisms, his play, whatever. Some people defended him in a way that I thought was a little irrational for years, and some people attacked him in a way that I thought was a little irrational for years. Right? I think both of those were kind of this weirdly unnecessarily controversial conversation around him that I think muddied the water with what Lamar is or isn't, or how good he is or isn't. For me, right, I've always loved Lamar. I love running quarterbacks. Like I grew up in the Michael Vick era. Like something about these dudes going out there and being able to run for 100 yards and throw for 250 is some of the coolest things in all of sports to me. And I think Lamar has been a one man wrecking machine since he got in the NFL, dude. When you're looking at like winning 3 MVPs, right, before you're however old, is he 30? He's not even 30 yet, right?
No, no, he's still in his 20s.
So okay, when you're looking at three MVPs in your 20s and potentially breaking the record for the most passing games with, I think it's either he's over a certain rating or he's in a perfect rating, but he's like up there with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Drew Brees and their career numbers for perfect games. He's hitting that before he's hit 30. To me, I think it's incorrect to classify him as a running quarterback, although the running is a huge part of what he does and it impacts the game. I think his arm's so good. Dude, like, I don't know what you want out of football. If you don't watch Lamar Jackson and think that's one of the best, most exciting players in the game, you and I are simply looking for such different things out of the sport. And I understand. I understand if you want to bring up things that Burrow or Herbert or Josh Allen do better than Lamar. And I would agree with you on most of those things. But I think when you look at the total package, the leadership, the consummate professional, earning that contract, very few players can return value on a $250 million contract. And I would argue that Lamar has done that and then some. Um, I love Lamar as a player, man. I'll root for him till the day he dies, right? Or till the day his NFL career dies. I'll root for him in the league.
Yeah, my only like real hang up on putting Lamar in the God tier was just the postseason lack of success for I guess lack of a better word, right? He has finally gotten a couple wins in the postseason. He has still had he plays really poorly against the Chiefs and then the Steelers, or the other team that seemed to have his number. Um, that's not to say that he's not built different, right? Like he is one of a kind. There's a reason he has the complete ownership over the NFC because he offers something that a lot of quarterbacks just can't. So I was fine with putting him in God tier. I don't know, maybe a deep postseason run. He might even jump over Josh Allen, but TBD. All right, so next to start off the elite tier, we're going to drop two guys at once because I think they're very, very close, and there's an argument to be made for either of these guys. It is going to be Joe Burrow at number 4 and Justin Herbert at number 5, if he will go all the way up there. All right, you want to take this one, Yanni?
Well, I mean, it's sort of a joint. I mean, you've been actually the biggest Herbert guy ever since he came in the league. But I will say that I thought Herbert was going to the Dolphins when he was drafted, dude. I still think that's one of the biggest mistakes they've ever made. I loved Herbert in the pre-draft process. So, I mean, we've both been high on these guys. Um, tradition, dude, it's really interesting, right? They are your traditional chew you up from the pocket, big armed quarterbacks that do kind of everything in that regard, but they're also both mobile. They're also both capable of hitting runs, throws on the run. Burrow, I would say, is more mobile. Like in the NFL this year, Burrow leads the NFL in yards out of the pocket or yards when moving, or it's either yards when moving or yards out of the pocket. It's the stat that when he scrambles and passes, basically. And a big part of that's Jamar Chase, but like Burrow really makes some impact plays moving, and Herbert's just flat out can run. It seems like his foot's gotten healthy and he can run a lot. I think both of them, dude, in any other era of the NFL, like these guys would probably be packed up there in the top two or three. I think they're two of the top maybe 30 or 40 most talented throwers of the football or quarterbacks we've ever seen come in the league. And when it's all said and done, they may work their way higher than that, right? They're just in an era with those top three guys. It's the reason they're not higher. But like, dude, if someone really wanted to put their foot down and say that they have one of these guys somewhere, I think Herbert's probably the hardest one to argue because he hasn't had the sustained postseason success. His one postseason run went pretty badly. But also he's been playing with a lot less talent around him, man. Those Chargers are a wreck. I think any of these five guys, dude, you're talking about like anchors of a franchise. I just think these two guys are a little bit lower than the next year. What do you think? What's the difference to you between the Allen and Mahomes? To me, it's like maybe it's like the MVP production, it's the consistent wins. I just feel like there's like a level of excellence that makes these guys elite as opposed to god tier quarterbacks.
I think that both of these guys could make their way up to God tier. I think that both of them, though, have had to battle through injuries, right? Whether or not it's Burrow, he's had 2 season-ending injuries at this point. There was a question coming into the year of is his wrist right? We were super guilty of not knowing, but Joe Burrow's come out and played at like an MVP level. I think if the Bengals had a better record, he would be probably the front runner for that position. Then same with Justin Herbert, right? He's really tough. Like I think last year he hurt a rib in week 2, basically was
Oh
playing
yeah.
injured all year. This year in the offseason, he had a foot injury that I think, coupled with that and a lack of weapons, plus Greg Roman's obsession with running the ball, right? His production just really wasn't there. But we've seen the past couple weeks those we've seen Justin Herbert really take off, kind of like we've seen in his rookie year, other point and at other points. So these both of these guys really can do everything. I guess Joe Burrow maybe is less of like a scrambler of the football and more of a scrambler to throw the ball, but still both elite play callers. both Super Bowl caliber quarterbacks. I think they have a chance to win a Super Bowl, in my opinion. All right, next member of the elite tier is going to be C.J. Stroud, and I'll take this one. Listen, man, I don't think we've seen many guys like CJ in the league. Obviously, over the past couple weeks, he's kind of hit a sophomore slump. Is it because Nico Collins is gone? Our defense is finally figuring him out because they have more tape on him. I'm not sure, but it's very rare for a player to come out of college and just be completely ready to go. CJ came to like I believe a 2 or 3 win Texans team, immediately got them into the playoffs this year or last year, sorry. And then this year he's leading his team that's been severely injured with a bad O line to a 7-4 record. Dude's a gamer, high character guy. I can't think of well, I mean, other than the other five guys, right? Like, I would be perfectly happy with CJ running my franchise. Just absolutely everything. He checks every box you want as a quarterback. What do you think, Yanni?
Well, just the last point about everything's true. The last point about that, though, guys, he went from a team that was supposed to be bottom five in the NFL. Bottom, we wrote that nobody drafted CJ Stroud in fantasy because it was a joke. Nobody drafted Nico Collins because it was a joke. He took a team that was supposed to be relegated to the absolute dumpsters of the NFL, right? Like he was supposed to be what, the Jags are this year or something like that. He took them on a playoff run, gave Lamar a pretty good game, right? Did all this sort of stuff. And then this year, there were talks that they should be one of the four most likely teams in the AFC for the Super Bowl. I think it's been lost in all that is that CJ is the difference in there. CJ. And I understand their defense got a lot better. D'Amico Ryans is obviously a great head coach. Joe Mixon's is a big ad. Stephon Diggs for a little bit was a big ad. I understand. But dude, that is the definition of an elite quarterback. If you take a team from a bottom five team to a potential Super Bowl contender, probably top 10 in betting odds this year, yeah, he belongs up there, in my view.
All right, next on our elite tier is going to be the old dog, Matt Stafford.
That's going to be you again. That's your boy.
All right, yeah, I guess I kind of fought for this. Listen, man, Matt Stafford has had a really long and interesting career, right? I would call him one of the older guys in the NFL at this point, but make no mistake, he absolutely is a general out there, tough as nails, always playing through injuries. He's been the architect of like multiple career years for wide receivers, right? Look at Calvin Johnson, Puka Nakua. He was the general of that. The Cooper Cup seasons. Like he is a consistent factor. He has a super quick release. Obviously, it helps now that he went from the Lions, right, a career losing organization where I think that his greatness kind of got lost in the shuffle of everything that was happening, to coming to the Rams with Sean McVay, winning a Super Bowl, having a team last year, right, that had the fallout just financially from the Super Bowl run where they kind of just paid everyone, kicked everyone's contracts back. So by all accounts, they were supposed to be a bad team last year, right? Got them into the playoffs. They were playing some of the best football down the stretch. The roster, I would say, at this point is still not where it needs to be from a talent perspective, but Stafford has been reliable, constantly moving the offense. Without him on the LA Rams, it's an entirely different conversation, in my opinion. We think he deserves to be in this elite tier for sure. To close out the elite tier, Jalen Hurts. Then I'll let Yanni take this one.
Yeah, so absolutely, you guys will see the theme. Right? I'm a fan, man, of athletic, mobile quarterbacks. It's exciting to me. I understand it's not traditional, and I understand that the league is catching up to him a little bit, but I really do love it. I think it has a place in the sport. I love the diversity of how you can get it done in the NFL. And look, there is a difference. I'll explain when we get to the next tier between the elite, the sub elite. Right? There's a reason these are tiers. There's a difference here. In my opinion, the reason that Jalen belongs here is elite quarterbacks are quarterbacks that are consistently doing things that, dude, you're not getting outside of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, period. There is something to their game that is so unique and so game changing that they are a winning factor for your football team week in and week out. And I know we've seen the occasional drop offs from Jalen. Jalen always flutters for me between like 8 and 12 on any given week if I were to rank these things, right? About how do I think he played in the NFL or how do I think he's going to be rest of season. I really think this year, dude, with Kellen Moore, with a good offensive coordinator, look, with Shane Steichen, his last good OC, he made a Super Bowl run. Okay. And they made a Super Bowl run through the 49ers, even though Brock got hurt. They did run through the 49ers, right? And they gave the Chiefs a pretty damn good game. Now he's got Kellen Moore. And all of a sudden we're seeing look, his passing numbers are like good. They're not impressive or anything. But dude, 11 touchdowns on the ground, like all the rushing first downs, all of the four. And I understand like whatever, however many of those are tush push plays, but dude, that is an impact play. And that tush push gets first downs on 4th and 1s. We saw that with the Steelers game. They just lost a game because they couldn't convert 4th and 1s. To me, dude, 11 touchdowns has to factor in here when you were talking about 11 rushing touchdowns. Like, dude, that's like when you're rushing for like anywhere from the 5th to 10th most touchdowns in the NFL as a quarterback. Um, you're an elite quarterback, man, and especially like he has one of the best deep balls in football. He's not just a runner at all, but he adds that on to part of what makes Devonta Smith and AJ Brown so productive is his elite play. And to me, he strikes me as a leader of men. Like I think his demeanor is really like an old school dude, right? And like it'll always have a place in the game for guys like that. If his legs really drop off and he has to get it done in the pocket later in his career, maybe we see something change. I think for the next 3 or 4 years, the Eagles are going to be contenders. They're going to have a productive offense, and Jalen's the reason that's going on.
Yeah, I think that Jalen absolutely is just built different than any of the quarterbacks that are before him on this list, right? I think
Any
that
of them,
yeah, as a passer,
even
he has his flaws. Like he throws a great deep ball. To Yanni's point, right? There is some concern about his ability to make those intermediate throws, right? There is some concern about his accuracy. But the reason, in my mind, we kind of collaborated on the elite ranking for Jalen Hurts is just the excellence that is him in the short running game, right? Like the tush push has become a force multiplier in the NFL. Like that is I can't think of a play that has been more of a sure thing than the tush push, right? And that is built off the strength of what Jalen Hurts is able to do. Teams in the league have tried to copy that play without nearly as much success as the Eagles have had, right? Like when you are to the point where you're scoring 11 touchdowns, like I believe that might be leading the league in rushing touchdowns. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think he probably is leading the league in that. That even if you have shortcomings as a passer, we think that that part of his game is enough to push him into that elite tier with these other guys. All right, now for the start of the sub-elite tier. 49ers fans out there rejoice. Brock Purdy.
well,
Yanni, I'll let you take him.
well, no, I mean, okay, I was going to let you go now, but real quick, just to explain, because these are kind of nitpicky tiers. Sub elite to me, what a sub elite player is means their floor is a game manager level game floor. Their ceiling is a top 5 to 10 ceiling, an elite ceiling. A game manager plus has a ceiling of an elite player, like they'll play above their skis, but more often than not, you're going to see them dip into that, game manager play. They're going to be game managers with a little bit of game manager, with a little bit of elite upside. These guys are elite like most of the time. Most games you're going to get a pretty good game, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like you're going to win some games with them, right? But they're also going to have games where they have, 200 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, and they get panned in the media. But I'm not comfortable in any way with having this tier of guys associated with game manager. Like it's just not, to me, it's an inappropriate use of them. And Brock Purdy is going to be the most controversial guy on the list. If you ask the most ardent of Niners fans, they're going to say he's an elite quarterback. Um, my problem with that is there are tools, dude. There are tools that simply are not there. At one point this year, he was leading the NFL in rushing first downs, which was really cool. He's actually had rushing upside this year, but he's not in any way, you would never put him with a Jalen Hurts, even a Justin Herbert, a Lamar Jackson. We know that, right? Everyone knows. Even Patrick Mahomes has a unique rushing that I think is, and Josh Allen. I mean, come on. So to me, he doesn't have the physical attributes at all, the size, the strength, the speed, even though he is crafty, even though he does do those things. He just, it there's obviously a tier there that he will never cross, and an arm strength too. Look at these guys that are on that list above him. And again, as much as I love Brock, and I do truly love Brock, there's an arm strength difference there that I don't think can be overcome to slide him above any of them. Maybe Stafford retires. And there's like a little bit of wiggle room for him to pop up there. I'm not saying it's impossible. But his game is between the ears. His game is as a leader. His game is processing speed, is reads, is reacting to the defense, and kind of all the stuff that he keeps in his head. Even that we're seeing that get challenged this year a little bit as his receivers get hurt. So I think he's perfect right here. I think he is a sub elite quarterback that, on his best day plays like a ranked 5 to 7 quarterback. On his worst day, he's going to play like a ranked 12 to 15 quarterback. A terrible Brock game where he gets destroyed in the media is 200 yards, a score or two, and a turnover or two. And that creates a national media discourse for a week or two about what's wrong with Brock, which does actually say that we expect him to be an elite quarterback week in and week out. If we expect that, he took Patrick Mahomes to the wire. He had 4 or 5 game leading drives in the Super Bowl against the best defense in the league. Like, that needs to be respected. He did not have the sophomore slump that other players have. He belongs right there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there was a large media narrative last year when the Niners were on their big run, right? That Brock Purdy was a product of the Avengers around him. I think that Brock being able to elevate his play this year with less around him is kind of squashed that narrative. I think that you might have some people still argue, right, that Brock Purdy is not the player that certain people think he is. But in my mind, like, he is done more than enough for this 49ers team, right? He's a cerebral player. He's like, his preparation is really good. Has he studies the game. He has a nose for the game that most people don't. But he also, what really pops off the screen to me are Brock's instincts, right? Like, he has the speed where he can move around in the pocket and scramble to create plays down the field. I think the reason we saw all of these rushing first downs that he had early in the year, right, is because his instincts were there too. So
Yep.
really love the kid. I mean, we're two Niners fans. We may be bullish on that, but I mean, I don't think so at this point. I think that the doubters are slowly dwindling. But there may be some controversy on this next quarterback at number
I'm
10.
bullish. I'll let Ted handle this because Ted is extremely bullish on this guy, but I like it. I was
We
wrong.
got Baker Mayfield is our 10th overall quarterback this year. And listen, boys, when we talk about intangibles, we talk about just having a nose for the game and just competitive desire. Baker Mayfield, man, I don't think there's anybody else out there like him, right? Like, he's just totally turned around his career, from number one overall draft pick disappointment bust on the Browns to journeyman through the Carolina Panthers experience to now finding his home in Tampa Bay. I think that this year more than any other year, right? We last year with Dave Canales, we saw, I think, a migration from a bottom end, you might be out of the league type of quarterback to a, hey, you know what, this guy's pretty good. And this year, I think we've seen Baker take another step into guy that is carrying his team to wins. He's done a little bit of everything, right? When he has all of his guys in there, he can get in a shootout with the Atlanta Falcons, throw for 300 plus yards and 4 touchdowns. When he doesn't have his guys, he's out there competing like an absolute beast, whether it's against a 3 point game against the 49ers, whether it's taking the Chiefs to overtime. I know you guys saw that play where Nick Bosa was hanging off of him and he's just dragging another guy, throwing an absolute dot to Rashad White. He's the only quarterback to beat the Detroit Lions. They were outgained 2-1 in that contest, and he still found a nose for the end zone. Listen, I think that at this point his play has been undeniable. Whether or not you think that's sustainable, I mean, I'll let you guys be the judge of that. But based on Baker's play this year, I could not keep him out of my top 10. What do you think, Yanni?
Yeah, fantasy is not a 1-to-1 for NFL production, but until his bye week, he was the number 2 producing asset in all of fantasy football, which is close to production. I mean, it's not 1-to-1, but it's close. And he was doing that without Godwin and Mike Evans. Dude, when you're carrying a roster like that to potentially winning your division title when you've lost names on your season like Godwin and Evans, I think you belong up there. And I think these next two guys we'll get into, people will be inclined to say, well, their arm strength, their legs, they're flashier, they're more talented than them. But dude, there's something to be said for elevating the team around you and carrying your team and being dude, consistency is the most impressive elite trait or the most elusive elite trait, meaning nobody notices it. It's an invisible superpower to be consistent. And like, dude, that you'll win a lot of football games just showing up consistently every week. And Baker this year has been the paragon of consistency, of heart, of leadership. I hope he gets a big extension. Dude, he had to come back. He's suing his family in court for stealing $20 million his whole rookie contract. He's moved 5 teams. Like, come on, man. He deserves his flowers. He deserves the sub-elite hatting, and I hope he stays there. I hope they build the team up around him a little bit. He has a real chance to compete next year. He does have a win over the Lions this year, too, by the way.
Do you want to do these next two guys together?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think they belong. I think they're for very same similar reasons.
Yeah. I think that these two guys are cut from the same cloth, in terms of the style of player they are, and it is going to be Kyler Murray and Jaden Daniels. And I'll let you take this one because you're the big Jaden guy.
Yeah, well, Kyler too. Remember, I had Kyler top 12 coming into this year, and like that was sort of a controversial take. People were saying the Cardinals should get rid of Kyler, and I thought that was a crazy opinion. I know both of these guys. Kyler more so with the inconsistency. I was kind of surprised when we went and looked at Kyler's numbers. He's been so up and down, but I think a big part of that is how much the rushing game has carried the team this year. Like they've just been happy to run the ball 30, 40 times, and that leaves Kyler statistically deficient. But to me, right, both of these guys, dude, when you talk about upper end playmaking ability, these guys have both flashed elite traits way more than once in their career. Kyler more so than Jaden, who's been around longer. But Jaden had like get bad defenses, losing teams. But he had a 3 to 5 game stretch this year where people were wondering, is this one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football? He damaged his rib, and my understanding is that has impacted his accuracy and his willingness to run. They're just not willing to run him with the rib like that. You can get all sorts of crazy like organ damage if you have a rib, all sorts of stuff, and also your accuracy. You can't torque your throws. So to me, it looked like more like that Jaden's been injured than dropped off, but it's probably a combination of the two. Um, and Kyler's had some bad games this week, dude. When you talk about the rushing and scrambling upside that these guys have and big arms, they are not just rushers and scrambling. Jaden actually was one of like the 3 or 4 best deep ball throwers in his college class. I really thought that would translate to the NFL. We've seen flashes of it. It's not consistent. They both belong here. I understand if you want to argue they should be above Baker, even Brock, if you're just going on straight talent. I mean, I don't hate that argument. I just think, again, consistency has to be respected. And uh, having a really high floor means something in this league, being a really high floor player. And I think Kyler and Jaden have shown a pretty low floor this year, albeit while having a high ceiling. So I think they belong right here.
Yeah, to me, both of these guys, right? They both have the talent to make it to the god tier. I think both of these
Yeah.
guys, if
Yeah. Yeah.
things shake out right and their game kind of develops, they absolutely have the talent to make it to the god tier. It's very rare that you have quarterbacks that are running 4.2, 4.3, 40s, right? They both have really, really great arms. Jaden Daniels, we've seen at points this year, has a beautiful deep ball. Kyler also has a good deep ball. They both, well, I guess Kyler more so than Jaden, right? Because it's his first year, have struggled with injuries. But I mean, definitely, I would say sub elite with their legs, with their speed, with their ability to create more so than a lot of these guys that are coming up here in the Game Manager Plus area. So let's get into Game Manager Plus, and we're gonna lead off this tier with Dak Prescott. And I'll let you take this one, Yanni.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that you want. I'm like looking down our list as we work here. I'm gonna guess that you want at
I want the
least the
next
next.
guy. I want the next one for sure. Yeah.
I mean, look, Dak. So look, there's nothing. I don't think there's really anything too dramatic to say about Dak. Another guy. I've always been a fan of Dak. Always, always since his preseason games when he was playing with Roma. I remember I was living with my grandparents at the time. I was working or whatever, and I would come running downstairs, and be like, "Hey guys, I got to watch a preseason game because it was Dak playing." So that's pretty weird, right? When you see a fourth round, fifth round quarterback that's playing like that. But I've always liked them. I think again, so to me, Dak's biggest thing is consistency and intangibles. He seems like a really mature dude. He seems like a kind of a presence in the locker room that people conglomerate around, and like that he keeps the team steady. The only problem is now the tangibles, the on the field steadiness. Dude, you see some of those insane decisions from Dak where you just go, what? And then like the playoff performances where he's had total meltdowns. Game manager plus means his baseline is game manager and he shows some flashes of elite talent, right? That is to me the definition of Dak. Maybe every 3 or 4, or for 3 or 4 games, you'll get this thing where you're going, "Oh my God, is that a top 10 quarterback?" And then you'll have a few games where you go, "Oh my God, man, that's rough." And really, what you want Dak to be doing is somewhere in between. Um, there's really not a whole lot to say. He's really consistent. He consistently will have prolific yardage, and he will consistently have turnovers, and he will consistently underperform in the playoffs. He does not belong in the sub elite tier to me, although I'm sure Cowboys fans would disagree.
Yeah, I think by the numbers, right? If you look at Dak's numbers from a macro perspective, I think that a lot of people could argue that he may be in that sub elite tier, right? A lot of what I think kind of knocks Dak down into this game manager plus are those weird decisions and just the playoff performances haven't been there, and there are weeks that he doesn't give you the upside that some of these other guys do, right? Still a great player. Still, I mean, I probably wouldn't be happy to have him on my team at his contract. But definitely like a nice quarterback to have in the building for sure. All right, next one. This may be controversial. I'm not sure, but it is going to be Jordan Love in the Game Manager Plus territory. I've been very outspoken about this player. He's a very polarizing player, I think. I think that Jordan Love's talent is that I think Jordan Love could be an elite player. Like he absolutely has the talent to be in that Burrow, Herbert, CJ type of tier. We've seen flashes of him, especially last year during his 8 game run, where he's looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the league, if not the best quarterback in the league. But we've also seen like flashes of him early in the beginning of last year, right? Like he was looking to be a subpar quarterback, right? It was his 4th year in the league, his first time starting. So the jury's kind of out on him. I think that where I kind of land on Jordan Love as a player, right? Colin Cowherd likes to call him a little bit more Brett Favre than Aaron Rodgers. I think if you call someone Brett Favre, that comes with some connotations of like really sustained success, and we are sure that you are a great player. I think that the talent is there, but some of the decisions this guy makes, you just scratch your head, right? I believe he's missed 3 or 4 weeks this season, and he's still leading the league in interceptions. That's not to say that moving on from Aaron Rodgers was not the right move from the Green Bay Packers. I think that especially this year, we've seen that moving on to Jordan Love probably was the right call by Brian Gutekunst in the front office, but I think he still has a lot of development to do. That's not to say that he cannot get better, but at this point, I cannot put him any higher than a game manager plus. I think that's the definition of what this category is, right? You expect game manager. He has the upside of an elite player, but that also might not be the case. What do you think, Yanni? Do you think we're too low on Jordan Love?
I mean, we've had hours of conversation about Jordan Love, right? So like I'm fine if someone wanted to put him all the way up at like 11 right behind Brock. If you think he belongs in the higher echelon of the sub elite tier, fine. If you want to put him all the way down where we put him, down toward 13, 14, 15, like to me, it's like I think people are going to get really hung up on the incredible upside we see. I mean, he's had stretches where he's a top 5 quarterback, and you see sometimes he makes plays where you're like, that's one of the most beautiful plays I've seen all week. Or he's like a gunslinger, he's really exciting. But dude, I've seen so many plays where like he is a losing factor. He is a factor in why the team will not win the game. And like, what do you do with that sort of massive variance? It certainly has a place in football. I'm glad he's in the NFL. It makes it really interesting. It gives you a lot of good Packers games. I'm not really complaining about that, but when we're talking about like, the one that I guess me and Ted will always harp on, to me, there was a big conversation when he played Brock Purdy in the playoffs about not a person on earth would prefer Brock Purdy over Jordan Love. And like, I don't know, man. I don't know what is it worth when he's going to throw 2 or 3 insane interceptions in a playoff game and Brock will give you 4 or 5 game leading drives against the best defense in football and play almost a perfect game against one of the great defensive coordinators the game's ever seen with the best defense in football in the Super Bowl, as opposed to Jordan Love, who's, air mailing interceptions against the Niners in a divisional game. I don't know. Maybe this year's when he really brings it together. But we've seen like 6 plays where I go, what the fuck are you doing? Like red zone interceptions, almost blowing these games. So I'm not comfortable having him in the sub elite tier. I think you have to respect the consistency or the talent or whatever it is that those other guys above him have. So I think he's fine right here. I'm open to moving him up, but I think he's fine.
Then these next two guys we're gonna drop at the same time because I think that there's an argument to be made they could be similar players, and it's going to be Jared Goff and our guy Tua Tagovailoa. And I'll take this one. I think that these players definitely belong in the Game Manager Plus tier. That's not to say, honestly, there's a stark difference between these two guys and Jordan Love to me, right? I think that the upside of a Tua or a Jared Goff is not at the level of Jordan Love, right? Like I think Jordan Love has elite upside. I think that Jared Goff and Tua, they probably couldn't get much higher than this, right? But both of these players are absolutely perfect for the systems that they're in. They're doing what what their role is, right? They're doing their job, as Bill Belichick would say. Jared Goff, he has his flaws as a quarterback. He is very um, I guess, still in the pocket. He's not a very good mover like a Brock Purdy or a Kyler Murray or a Jaden Daniels, right? But he sits in the pocket and he delivers it kind of like a Matt Stafford does. Then for Tua, I think that his timing and rhythm are something that very few people have in the NFL. It takes a certain kind of person to run Mike McDaniel's system in Miami, and we've seen it. Like replace Tua with any other quarterback in Miami, and that's a bottom 3 or 4 roster because they're just not able to facilitate the ball like he is. Right? Tua is like a point guard. Like he reminds me of like a Chris Paul or whatever. Right? He's just absolutely elite at being able to orchestrate the offense and do what he's asked to do. There are limiting factors to both Tua and Goff that we think makes them game manager plus, but because they're such perfect fits in their system, we think they have elite upside in terms of production and what the end goal is for your team. What do you think about these two?
Exact same thing, dude. Just both guys. If you support them with a supporting cast, with enough of a defense, right, with enough weapons around them, they can get you to a Super Bowl. Goff did it. I have no doubt that if the Dolphins were able to sustain their ceiling that they've shown over the last 2 years, they could beat any team in the league. It's just that they don't, for a myriad of reasons. They don't, but they belong there. They firmly belong there.
Yeah, and that's
And
gonna.
I'm
Oh yeah, go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm looking at this next tier, and I think we should do the first two guys should drop together, and then like the next four are this thick tier that all belong in the same conversation. I think.
Yeah,
So it's up to you, but if that sounds good, I think that's how we should hit it.
yeah, that sounds good to me. And we're gonna start out the game manager tier with the young guns of Bo Nix and Drake May.
Yeah, so I think the point to make here, I actually don't think game managers where these guys like that's not their archetype of a player, right? I don't think that's where they're going to end up in their careers. I actually think both of these guys have shown enough flashes. Probably if you were going to ask me, Bo Nix is more likely to end up in the game manager tier. But for now, I think what they're being asked to do by their respective franchises is manage the game. Go in there, show us a little bit of rushing upside. Don't mess up. Don't throw picks. Do what you can within the offense. I know May's a little bit more gunslinger than Nix. This maybe is even a little too high for them over the established vets. Dude, if you ask me like who's playing better football this year, and again, maybe it's controversial. These things are subjective. I would have them above this kind of thick tier of vets that's going to come next. Um, just because I think they've shown flashes, right? And I don't think this is where they're going to end up in their career. But I think for now, if you want to call it developmental slash game manager, fine, because they're developing. I think that's right where I'd have these guys, right? And if you're asking who you'd rather have for the next 5 years, the answer may be very different. These guys may slide up those tiers, but for now, I like having Nix and May here, dude. I think they're just real solid middle of the road quarterbacks. And look, dude, for 10 games into your NFL career on bottom five talented rosters, it's actually a great statement about both of them. I think this is actually very bullish for both of these guys. So I'm happy to have them here for now.
Yeah, I mean, two rookies, right? There are some similarities between them, but I also think they're incredibly different players. Bo
Yeah.
Nix, I think, is been able to do exactly what Sean Payton wants to do in terms of running his offense, right? We saw Russell Wilson in Denver last year. The offense was not running the way Sean Payton wanted to. He brought in Bo Nix, and he's been able to facilitate that perfectly, right? He isn't asked. He isn't being asked to do too much yet, but he's doing a fantastic job at what Sean Payton's scheme is and what he's asking him to do. And then Drake May, I saw this graphic the other day. It was one of the crazier things I've seen. Drake May is the most efficient quarterback in the NFL in terms of making plays like off script, right? Which is just a testament to his being able to scramble. He's got great legs. I think he's got legs like a Kyler Murray or Jaden Daniels. He really moves around good. He's got a rocket arm. He's a little bit more gunslinger. He'll throw a lot more picks than Bo Nix, right? He'll have more negative plays, but especially on a team like the Patriots, right, where there isn't very much talent, just a baller like him, right? Someone who's able to make those plays off script is kind of what that offense needs at this point in time to score points. So two very different players. I think the upside is sub elite for both of these guys, and you know, definitely good rookie season so far for them for sure. Next player, someone that I have disrespected very greatly. Yanni kind of insisted that we move him up a little bit more in the rankings, though. It is Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. Listen, man, John Middlecoff says he's one of the great bridge quarterbacks of all time. He kind of had it was pretty similar to Baker, right? His career was pretty much dead in the water. He was viewed as a bust, as a New York Jet. I believe I forgot who the player was, but there was a story about Geno Smith getting punched in the locker room. It was definitely like not. He was not a team leader in New York. It was not. His career just wasn't going well, right? When he got to Seattle, I believe he was the backup for 1 or 2 years. Ended up working with Dave Canales as his quarterbacks coach, and ever since then, right, ever since Seattle moved off of Russ, Gino has kind of been a consistent factor for a Seahawks team that has been able to sustain middle of the road, like 8-8, 9-8 type of records, right? So he's not just absolutely ass losing you games. I think he's shown at points. He has strong suits. He has a pretty decent deep ball, right? Multiple times this year with Ryan Grubb, he's been asked to throw the ball 40 or 50 times in a game. A lot of times when you ask a quarterback to throw 40 or 50 times in a game, it can be a disaster. Gino has made his fair share of mistakes, right? I believe he has 11 touchdowns and 11 interceptions on the year, but he's also been a key contributor to offensive success at points. I don't think that he's surrounded by the worst talent in the world. He has DK Metcalf, he has Jackson Smith the Jigba, he has Ken Walker, but he also has a terrible O line, right? His center like has one terrible snap that goes over his head per game. He's making the best of what he's got, and I think at the very least you should call him like a top of the near the top of the game manager tier in a minimum. Uh, Even though I hate the Seahawks, that's where we have him. What do you think, Yanni? Was that fair?
I actually, I actually think you did a great job, dude. I think you were as fair as you could be. I would drop the rest of this tier here because I think it's a very similar conversation for all of them, unless you disagree.
No,
I think the
no,
next
I agree.
three, I think the next three guys just sort of.
Yeah. The next three are going to be Kirk Cousins. We have our guy Sam Darnold, and then we have Mr. Unlimited Russell Wilson. It's like the vets. It's like
The
the
vets.
older vets. Yeah, yeah, the grizzled vets. And I'll let you take this one, Yanni.
So the one I just want to flag real quick is obviously one, if we're talking 5 years ago, right? Russ is like top 5 to 10. It's not 5 years ago. Two, if we're talking pre Achilles injury, Kirk Cousins was much closer to me to a top 12 quarterback. Like he was balling out, dude, in really just prolific passing numbers. But I think when you're that age and when you get an Achilles injury, it does fundamentally change your body, your mobility, your mentality. um, Kirk Cousins has taken a pretty, not a massive step back, but I'd say like 20% worse this year, 25% worse this year. And like when you were a fringe guy like that, that drops you pretty far down the list. But to me, these are all veterans that I think any team that's transitioning, any team that needs a 1 to 2 year stopgap before you get your young guys ready, if you need someone to throw in there who's going to make his fair share of mistakes, but it's going to make his fair share of throws, has plus attributes, has minus attributes in some ways, and just sort of, I don't want to like belittle any of that. It's very hard to be an average quarterback in the NFL. At any given time, there are maybe 20 guys on earth that can weekly play like an average quarterback in the NFL, right? But these are just average and on the lower end of average. Like I think these are all guys that their franchises go, it's not terrible. I like if that would be their Yelp review is like there's worse quarterbacks. So it's like that's kind of how I feel about these three guys. But I don't really, again, me and Ted, big debate about Russ this week, right? He's played pretty well on pace for 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns. It's not like garbage, but he's played against terrible defenses. And he's had horrible red zone efficiency. And he threw a pick in the red zone. And probably, I don't, do you want to say it's him that cost him the game? They couldn't convert 4 fourth and shorts this week, and they lost a game to a division rival that was way undermanned compared to their roster. So what do you make of that? I don't really know. What I really make of it is he's probably just an average to below average quarterback that plays above average at times. And Sam Darnold's had really bad losses this year. He's had really good wins this year. I don't know what to make of that. And then Kirk Cousins just sort of is what he is. I think he will be locked in that 15 to 18 range for the rest of his career. Maybe he'll slide a little lower as he gets older. That's
Yeah,
really all I got on.
I mean we have three veterans, right? That are so far they have winning records on the season, and all of their teams would be in the playoffs at this point in time, right? I think that for Sam and Russ, that they're probably having better seasons than people expected, right? Like I think at this point in their career leading up to the year, people thought they were more of a backup than a starter, but they've stepped in
Yeah,
admirably. They've been able to at least not sink the team at points this year, right? And orchestrate wins. And you have to be in order to be a game manager, right? You have to at least keep your team on schedule for those wins. So I think that it's probably good stories for them. And then for Kirk, right? I think that he was probably up near the Goff and Tua tier before his injury. I think that Achilles injury really has taken something out of his game. That's not to say he doesn't have moments where he absolutely can throw the team on his back. I look at the week 2 miraculous comeback win against the Eagles. I look at the Thursday night miraculous comeback against the Buccaneers. You can see old Kirk sometimes in there, but his mobility is just so limited for a guy who wasn't mobile to begin with. Now you have a torn Achilles that he's throwing on. It's you could do worse than Kirk though. I think that in terms of getting the Falcons to the playoffs, right, which is their goal, bringing Kirk in, he's at least keeping them on schedule there. So that closes out our game manager tier, and next we're going to go into the subpar tier, and we'll lead this tier off with Caleb Williams because I think he's really a one of one in this tier. And I'll take this one because I've watched a lot of Caleb Williams this year. He has flashes where he looks really good. At least in spots, right? The reason I have him as subpar, I don't know if it's even fair to him, whether or not it's more of a Bears issue or a Caleb issue, is that he's been holding on to the ball way too long and just getting crunched. 9 sacks surrendered to the Patriots. I believe he's the most sacked quarterback in the NFL this year. I think that when Caleb gets rattled, right? We've seen it in games, especially against the Redskins, is when I noticed this one. When he gets rattled and is running before the plays can develop, the play ends up being DOA. That's not to say that he is not an extremely talented guy. You can see it. If you watch Caleb, you see the talent, you see the special, you see the ability to escape pressure, but it's just kind of been it feels really hard for him to find his footing at this point in time. I think that maybe an off season, maybe an offensive coach in the building will help him out. He certainly has the weapons around him from a skill position standpoint with Rome Dunze, with DJ Moore. I don't think you can ask for a more talented group out wide. I think that maybe just a little bit more support, another draft to support him with offensive linemen, especially, and at least an offensive mind will vault him up the tiers eventually. It's just right now the production is what it is. We got to call a spade a spade. What do you think, Yanni?
Yeah, again, like this is really low for his talent, but to me, you have two options. You either don't rank him and say we're not getting an accurate representation of what he is, or you rank him and you go, we have to evaluate how he's played this year, and he's played subpar football this year. That's
Yeah,
it. Love the talent, love the player. I don't think this is a representation of him or what his career will be, but I think right now he is a subpar quarterback.
yeah.
He's making enough mistakes beyond the team, dude, that like he belongs there. And I was looking down the way you were talking there. I think the next three guys belong in the conversation together.
Okay, we
Or
could
no,
do that. I
if
was
you
thinking the next one should be
okay,
another
okay,
thing of his own,
that's fine because that is a different conversation a little bit.
and it's going to be Trevor Lawrence next in the subpar tier. And I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, so again, like I love Trevor's upside, dude. I really think he's got everything you're looking for. I just, dude, like when you're a serial underperformer and when you took the leap from year one to year two and then the drop off a cliff from year three and four, like I have no idea what to make of Trevor. If you want to say that we're not getting an accurate representation of him as a player, is that really a fair claim? He's had a Super Bowl winning head coach. They've gone and put multiple draft classes around him. He's had one of the five most productive running backs in football running by him. Maybe his receiving core hasn't been the best, but I mean, they've made an effort, right? They've gone out and gotten them a Calvin Ridley. They've gone out and gotten him a Christian Kirk. They went out and drafted a Brian Thomas and Evan Ingram they traded for. They've got Scherf on the O line. They made an effort to shore up the O line. They got him a Super Bowl winning head coach from the Andy Reid coaching tree. He plays in a soft division, a really soft division. And like at some point, I'm more inclined to say that he maybe is just not the most competent football player. That's it. I don't really know. If you want to say at his very best, he's flash top five upside. Yes, sure. At his very best, like I thought he would be competing with the Herberts and the Burrows of the world. I really did. I am in no way comfortable saying he's there, and I'm wondering if this just is what he is. He's been really injured the last 2 years. I guess that's part of it. But are we going to say that injuries lasted 32 months? That like 32 months of just nagging little injuries or what? I mean, maybe I drafted him in fantasy in a lot of leagues this year because he finished as a QB 12 last year, and I thought maybe he'll work his way into being a QB one, and he's looking at another season-ending injury. I don't really know what to make of him. What do you make of the Trevor Lawrence run here?
I mean, to me, the production has been inexplicable this year, right? We've seen flashes where Trevor plays really good. One game that comes to mind for me was the wild card round against the Chargers, where he had the 4 picks in the first half, and then capped it off with 5 touchdowns in the second half to get a come from behind win against Brandon Staley in the Chargers. So I mean, we've seen flashes of him being really good, but to me, his arrow is pointing down, man. I don't know. He's been in the league for long enough now, right? You can't say, oh, well, he's just a young player at this point. He's been a centerpiece of this team. He has gotten paid like a top tier quarterback, and the production has gotten worse, and he has looked worse over the year. He's had a couple throws this year where you just like, wow, he just completely missed that guy, right? So I think like Caleb in the subpar tier, right? His arrow is pointing up. Like to me, Trevor, he's holding this ground or arrow pointing down. We'll see if there's
Yep.
anything about his game that changes, but until further notice, I think this is just unfortunately the new standard for him. Then I think these next two guys could probably go together. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. I think I can't believe it, but yeah, I think so.
Hmm. The next two guys on our list are going to be Derek Carr and then Aaron Rodgers below him, which just hurts my heart. And I guess I'll take these two guys, right? So Derek Carr is someone that I've bullied for a long time, right? I've been out on Derek Carr for a while now. It's been years. I get that he had the I think it was like a 12-4 season with the Oakland Raiders back when they were still the Oakland Raiders, where he had a promising start to his career, but overall, the story of this player is inefficiency and red zone struggles, right? Like he's had years where he's thrown for 4,000 plus yards, but he's averaging like 1 to 2 touchdowns a game, right? He's averaging like 16 to 20 touchdowns in a year. On the New Orleans Saints, he just has kind of been surrounded by a subpar roster, and we've kind of seen its subpar results for the most part. He has a pretty decent long ball. So like we saw at points this year, like MVS have long touchdowns. We've seen Taysom Hill have a couple long touchdowns. Rashid Shaheed, I think is his name. Before he went down, he had a couple really good games. But overall, Derek Carr's consistency and ability to orchestrate the offense, I believe, leaves something to be desired, right? Like Chris Olave being attached to Derek Carr might have been one of the worst things possible for his career, whether or not it's Derek Carr refusing to throw him the ball or just giving him hospital balls over the middle that are getting him just irreparably concussed at this point. He in my opinion, right? He's still at the level where you could roll him out there, but he's more of a quarterback that you would want on a team that, is looking to be at the bottom of the division and a quarterback that I would certainly be targeting a young quarterback in the draft if he was like my number one. Then Aaron Rodgers, man, this has got to be one of the steepest drop offs of the year. I think I don't know if it's the Achilles or just the way he has not aged gracefully, but there's a stark difference now in what Aaron is, and it's crazy because 2 years ago, right? Like he was playing or I guess 3 years ago at this point, he was an MVP of this league. The fact of the matter is, he is so limited by his mobility at this point. He's lost that part of his game and he doesn't have time to get the ball out. So he's kind of become a check down merchant a little bit. His A dot is really, really terrible, even though he has the good arm. He's kind of, I mean, there are questions about his character. Certainly don't have them, right? But when you have the level of pull that he does these weird things where like he brings in his guys like Randall Cobb or Alan Lazard, like ended up coming to the New York Jets, who probably didn't have any business being on an NFL roster or a priority ad for a team, right? I think that just he's tried to LeBron James his way. He's tried to LeBron James the NFL for the last 2 years, but his talent and physical where he's at physically just isn't LeBron James anymore. I hate to see it being a Chico guy. I still like the dude. I think he's a great interview on McAfee. I think there's certain qualities to his game that he still has. The arm strength is still elite in my opinion, but just all of these factors working against him, the age and the injury, we don't have him any higher than mid to low subpar. What do you think, Yanni?
I don't really have a lot to add, man. It is depressing because I we grew up in the Aaron Rodgers era. I'd rather see him retire, to be very honest with you, than do this whole limping around as old man Aaron thing. And before he gets another injury, before he sinks another franchise, just call it a day, man. Far
Yeah.
be it, far out for me to tell a great man like that it's time to hang it up. But I would rather just remember Aaron as he was, if that's at all possible. If he could do that for me, I would appreciate it.
I think Aaron at his peak might have been the best quarterback of all time. That's not to say that the production was there, right? He only got one Super Bowl out of it, but Aaron, prime Aaron, I don't think we've ever seen anything like it, man. What a special player. I hope, I just hope he gets a couple more wins this season. It looks a little bit better than it has. And then these next two guys, do you want to put them together as like the
Yeah,
total
drop
wild
them together.
cards? We
They're
have
not to they yeah, drop them.
All right. We have the exciting wild cards in Anthony
Yeah,
Richardson and Jameis Winston. We're gonna tentatively say not consistent whatsoever. They can absolutely win you weeks, but the upside is elite. And I'll let you take this, Yanni, because I know you're a Jameis guy.
yeah. I mean, so look, he's on pace for like 4,000 yards this year, dude. When you come off the couch and you're on pace for 4,000 yards with the Browns, I I can't call him trash or ass or whatever. I can't. I just can't do it. I think we have been robbed of Jameis. Jameis should have been one of those floating quarterbacks that's been around for team to team bridging them. And at least you're going to get goddamn exciting football while Jameis is in there. I mean, look, I love him. You know what I was thinking about this week was like, what is so magnetic about the whole Jameis phenomenon in the NFL? And I think it's like there's something so pure about the joy he has, and like that. I don't know, as dudes, it's not really okay for us to like be that I don't know what you'd call it, just goofy and happy. There's something inspiring, dude, about Jay. Like he did snowmans. He goes, "My kid ate snow today. I'm eating snow today," and dives in the snow with his belly down like a penguin after. There's just something ridiculous about that like is honestly, it's inspiring to me that you can be that happy all the time. I guess I don't know what it is, dude, but to me that's like good vibes. It's okay as dudes every now and again to have someone who's a role model because they're happy. I think more people should maybe look up to people because they're happy. That's not okay as men to do, right? But I I love it, dude. It's a good vibe thing. It's a good vibe thing. It's okay to cheer for a fucking corny happy story, and that's what Jameis is. I'm rooting for it. I hope he sticks around in the NFL. Whatever. His play's fine. 4,000 yards, 20 something touchdowns would be his pace this year, 10 interceptions. It's not earth shattering, but it's definitely not garbage either.
Yeah.
And then Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson's younger than a lot of the quarterbacks coming into this draft class this year. I believe he only started one full season in Florida before coming to the NFL. He's so inexperienced, dude. Here's the only thing I know about Anthony. Two things I know about Anthony Richardson. His completion percentage is unacceptable. If he doesn't fix it, he will not be a viable NFL quarterback. Fine. But two, well, three things. His physicality on runs is unmatched by any quarterback in football. I do not care who it is, even Josh Allen. He is 20 pounds or 30 pounds heavier than Lamar Jackson and runs faster than him. I don't think people understand, dude. It's like having a miniature LeBron James who can play quarterback in the NFL. Dude, the force that guy hits defenders with is unique. It's very violent for quarterback. That's unique. Three. This one's the hot take. He can make throws that no other quarterback in football can make. That throw he had week one, falling backwards, right on his back leg, off his back foot, what was it, like 65 yards or something,
Yep.
bomb to, I believe, Alec Pierce in the end zone against the Texans. Dude, I'm sorry, I don't think Mahomes makes that throw. I don't think CJ Stroud makes that throw. Maybe Josh Allen makes that throw. Maybe Josh. Maybe I'm being unfair to Josh. But to me, so you have physical traits that are unmatched. You have the one trait that nobody can do anything about, which is years to develop and age. He is the youngest guy I believe, the youngest starting quarterback in football. He would have to be if he's younger than rookies coming in. Maybe he's older than some of the rookies now, but um, he has age, he has physicality, and he has arm talent. All of those can't be taught. You can teach higher completion percentage. You can teach reading the defense. You can teach those things. Now, does he do it or not? I don't know. That's going to determine where he falls next year. But I know he has the physical capability to be a top 12 quarterback in football. That's the whole theory of drafting him. You take him top three because, yeah, he's not one of those guys yet, but he might be. He might be. And I still think it's there. I'm still not out on him as a player at all. But for now, I think you have to have him down here. He's like 51% completion percentage this year, something like that.
Yeah. Just
Like, dude,
barely at 50.
it's a 50-50 proposition when he throws the ball, and that's unacceptable in football. 60% as well. 60% as well. So I don't know. What do you make of Anthony Richardson?
I mean, he's got all the talent to be a god tier player, right? It's just I think he's young and he needs snaps. And the way he plays on at least at a consistent level, it is the subpar tier. I think that he has an opportunity. I think that if he takes this off season, like we saw what taking 2 weeks off did for him last week against the Jets, right? If he has another off season to just learn and grow, kind of familiarize himself more with the Shane Steichen's playbook, and just get another offseason under his belt of maturity. I think that he has all of the upside in the world to just start blowing through these tiers. And then for Jameis, right? Just what a palate cleanser for Cleveland. I think that if Deshaun Watson did not have a torn Achilles, he would have made our ass tier, which is coming right up, right? And I think that the vibes in that locker room, that goofy sort of eating snow vibes, is exactly what the Cleveland Browns needed in a lost season. They have at least one guy that's smiling and happy to be in the building. I think it's
Yeah.
infectious. We saw it. We saw it on Thursday night. The entire Browns team was making snow angels. They looked happy. All right, then we'll lead off our ass tier with old Bryce Young. So I'll take Bryce since the Carolina Panthers are my second team. This has been one of the most bullied players on this channel, and honestly, I think that he's shown something in the past couple weeks. There are just flaws with his game, right? He is a sub 6 foot quarterback in the NFL with not great physical attributes. He is not when Russ came into the league, right? I think he was like 6 feet or close to that size, but he had a cannon arm. Drew Brees was an absolute mental assassin and had one of the most accurate balls in the league. Bryce Young just feels like he had that undersized problem and he didn't excel at anything else. It did not help. He was the first overall pick when he probably shouldn't have been. It went to a terrible franchise in the Carolina Panthers. But over the past couple weeks since he took over again for Dalton, he's at least shown something. He's at least completing some throws. There are some throws where he makes where I'm like, oh, that was a nice throw, Bryce. That's not to say he is not a bottom tier quarterback, though. I think that he's played admirably for the Carolina Panthers, but I don't think anything more than the top of the ass tier is where he belongs. What do you think, Yoni? I know you had a good read on him coming out of college.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of been here since he came out. And again, I always like to say it because he seems like such a good kid. Nothing about Bryce, nothing at all. I don't doubt for a second that he doesn't work his ass off. I actually think the reason that Nick Saban loves him so much, the reason you go number one overall, is because you're a grinder, because you're a dog. But it's so hard to be a good quarterback in football, and it's so hard. I mean, dude, he's built like a kid at Chuck E. Cheese. Like you remember that video of him with the backpack going up? He looks like a we used to have what was it called in Concord, the jungle. Remember
Oh
the
yeah.
ball pits at the jungle? You'd go and run around the jungle. He looks like he should be slicing cheese pizza at the jungle, right on the weekend. Um, but like, look, I'm open to the fact that his game was like anticipation, timing, touch, accuracy, defensive dissecting mentally, right? If he like gets it all together, I'm open to the idea that he can work his way into a game manager. But at this point, I do think that's his ceiling. Like, I don't think. I think if everything went totally right, he could work his way into the 16 to 20 range. That's all. Not a whole lot to say about him. And actually, I think the next guy's you too. You have a lot more to say
Yeah,
about the
I'll
next.
take the next one. The next member of the ass tier is going to be Gardner Minshew. Listen, this was a guy what did I say earlier this season? I said he's not a great quarterback. He's not a good quarterback. He's fine, is the way I would classify him. Or at least before we saw what this year was, right? Just last year, he almost got the Indianapolis Colts into the playoffs. Generally speaking, he had filled in admirably as a backup anywhere he had gone. This was the first season he was just scheduled to be the starter, right? He was the QB1 on our roster, and it has just not been good. He's been turning the ball over. I believe he has the most fumbles in the NFL. He hasn't been able to lead the charge on offense. I believe the Raiders are like bottom 5 or 6 in the league in terms of scoring. He's not being helped out at all by the guys around him. I think that if you put a good team around Gardner Minshew, he has game manager upside to maybe subpar, depending on how you want to evaluate a quarterback. But being on the team that is the Oakland Raiders, it looks really bad. He's been pulled at least 4 times this year mid-game. Antonio Pierce just is dead set on taking out Gardner Minshew and replacing him with literally anybody. I'm pretty sure if I like put a helmet on and was hanging out on the sidelines, like I might get in in the third quarter on an Antonio Pierce coached football team. That's not to say that he can't make plays. I mean, he's he's led wins at points this year. He led a comeback against the Baltimore Ravens in week 2. That was probably the high point of this season if I had to guess, right? I don't think it's going to get any better than that. But yeah, just based on the constant turnovers, the lack of production, he's definitely in the bottom tier of quarterbacks for us and ass. What do you think, Yanni?
Yeah, if you're like Antonio Pierce's guy that breeds rabbits for him to choke out, little of mice and men reference. Oh God, no, you can't say that. Hold on, I gotta stop. You can't say Lenny that crushes rabbits with his hands. Yeah, I think that's about right, man. I don't. I would have maybe had him a little lower, but this look, we're picking hairs. We're nitpicking here, like we're splitting hairs. Um, yeah, but just probably a guy that's going to pop up on starts here and there for the rest of his career. I think he's a backup you're thrilled to have, but probably shouldn't be starting and wouldn't be starting if there were enough starting quarterbacks in the NFL, right? That's sort of where I'm at. You can drop these next two because the last one I have nothing to say about him at all.
But before I drop them, I would just like to say, as a 49ers fan, I would love to have Gardner Minshew out there on Sunday instead of
Yeah,
Brandon Allen. That would be nice. I would enjoy
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I would feel fine with him as a backup. I
All
would.
right. Then the last two. These are the last two quarterbacks in the NFL in our estimation. At 31, we have Bill Levis, and at 32, we have Tommy Cutlets. I'll let you take this one because I took the last two.
Yeah, just to clarify, even if Daniel Jones were in, he would in fact be my 32. I don't know where Ted would have him, but I would have him at 32 if it were Daniel Jones. Um, you know, Will Levis is just someone, just real quick, man. He has like the physique on him is incredible. He's like built like prime Colin Kaepernick when Colin got so jacked he couldn't throw footballs anymore. He is huge, dude. So like his rushing upside is actually there. He's really athletic and has a big arm. I can't believe the mental translation to the NFL game that just has utterly failed. They brought him in a really quarterback friendly system. They brought him Joe Burrow's offensive coordinator for most of all of his career until now. They went and got him Calvin Ridley. They went and got him Tony Pollard. They've drafted around him, right? And I'm just really surprised to see it hasn't come along. I like, unlike some of these other guys with those attributes that I think have room to learn and grow. And I know I just said that with Anthony Richardson, right? If they have the physical talent, they get mental. I don't think it's there with Levis. I really don't. I think the light's on, but no one's home. I don't know how to describe it when I'm watching his football games. It's infuriating. I'm like, oh my God, it's not, I just, there's something that's wrong. And I just, my inclination is to say that's not an NFL quarterback. And then Tommy DeVito, what the fuck are we doing here? Did you have Daniel Jones crying in front of his locker because he cannot believe the Shakespearean betrayal of his teammates that just happened in his locker room. You have Dexter Lawrence say, yelling what's going on. Drew Lock looks livid. Dude, they're Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito is like the equivalent of voluntary euthanasia that the New York Giants are going through. It's like when you get in one of those, when you take the shot, they do that for old people now. You can just go in and say, I'm done, call it. He's their version of the hot shot that puts people down in a quarterback form. When your franchise goes, we want to completely destroy everything and do as badly as possible, and you're their option, you're going to be 32nd. And ironically, if they had left Daniel Jones in there, they may have gotten the same result. So yeah, dude, I hate, but I have to watch Tommy DeVito in football. I hate it. It's anyway. Anything to add on to those two fellas?
I can't possibly follow up that. But that's gonna do it for our tier list. If you made it through the video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. It helps the channel out. Let us know in the comments if you liked the Mystery Monday new type of content. And another thing to add to the comments is if you think we're just egregiously wrong on anything, let us know. Yell
Yeah.
at us in the comments. Really interested.
Some of these may be a little shorter. We may just do short little bashing on someone's Twitter takes or going through a subreddit or something. But it's kind of fun to try something a little more long form, a little more intricate, just talk about football outside of fantasy or betting. So hopefully you guys liked it.
Yeah. And we will catch you next week for head coach.
Thanks, guys.